The Trump administration has proposed increasing the budget for NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office by threefold, from some $60 million to $150 million US, amid growing concerns that humanity is utterly unprepared for the unlikely but still unthinkable, an asteroid strike of calamitous proportions. October 22nd, 2018, something is happening over at NASA with respect to our planetary and its defense program that should possibly have the world on edge, or, at the very least, curious as to what's going on the proposed budget for NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office that is increasing it by $90 million. This is during a time when the national budget is in dire straits. Hi everyone, it's Ross here at X Science, and here's a bonus short video for you today. But first, it would be really nice if you guys went over and watched our other earlier videos today about the weird water-related phenomena around the world. There seems to be a need to quickly divert a good chunk of the defense budget towards the Planetary Defense Program that is in charge of tracking INEO threats such as asteroids. No doubt, the threat from space is very real. If a large asteroid were to enter the Earth's atmosphere and then strike the planet, it would become the greatest catastrophe in the modern era. It would radically change the surface of the Earth, and it seems suspicious that NASA is suddenly seeking a bigger defense budget to thwart the threat of near-Earth objects. Happy NASA Budget Release Day! The White House released its fiscal year 2019 budget requests this morning, and it proposes more than $20 billion for NASA. Congress has yet to fund NASA in 2018, so the agency has spent this fiscal year operating on 2017 adjacent numbers, under a series of continuing budget resolutions and 2 government shutdowns. Complicating matters further is that after the budget was complete, Congress raised government spending caps, and the Office of Management and Budget proposed to give NASA another $300 million. Most of that would go to human spaceflight. NASA's top line is proposed to end up at about $20 billion. That's $372 million increase over what Congress most recently approved for 2017, and an $800 million bump over what the White House requested for 2018. It's fair to say that at least in the short term, the administration's interest in NASA has some funding behind it, though that interest is mostly centered on human spaceflight. The agency's 5-year budget runout looks less rosy. From 2020 through 2023, NASA's top line drops and flattens at about $19.6 billion. The biggest surprise was astrophysicists taking a big hit with the cancellation of WFIRST, a space observatory designed for exoplanet detection and dark energy research. The White House's rationale for the cancellation is that WFIRST was over budget, too closely timed to the James Webb Space Telescope, and that good science can be conducted with smaller, cheaper missions. Through a new line item called Commercial LEO Development, NASA is allocating $900 million through 2023 to spend on establishing a sustained commercial presence in low Earth orbit. But more simply, NASA will likely start giving commercial companies seed money to either build their own space stations or figure out how to transition the ISS to commercial control. This program could be structured similar to agency's commercial crew and cargo program. Expect this to get messy. There is already bipartisan support against the early ending of the ISS program, led by Florida Senator Bill Nelson, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and Texas Representative John Culberson. There is also some early industry backlash, notably by Boeing, which is the station's primary contractor. We already knew NASA was shifting its focus from Mars to the Moon, but now we're getting some specifics. NASA is now calling the Deep Space Gateway the Lunar Orbital Platform Gateway. Can someone please come up with a better name? The first LOPG element, the Power and Propulsion Module, was slated to launch on the first crew Orion flight in 2023. SLS is powerful enough to launch Orion and a co-manifested payload at the same time. Now that the module will launch a year earlier in 2022 on a commercial vehicle, a previous chart from a NASA Advisory Council meeting estimates the Power and Propulsion Module will weigh 8 or 9 tons, which means the Falcon Heavy could be a good choice for the job. NASA also would provide seed money to a variety of commercial partnerships, including on development of cargo and human-related lunar landers, a new lunar science initiative, and the incorporation of Science Technology Mission Decorate within its Deep Space Exploration Initiative to provide focused technology research and development. Planetary Science gets $2.2 billion, an increase of about $400 million over 2017 approved levels, and $300 million over 2018 requested levels. $268 million of that increase appears directed to elements of science for human spaceflight, most likely in the form of lunar precursor missions. The details are a bit unclear until we see the full budget. The Mars sample return effort gets $50 million for early mission studies, and one budget document mentions that possibly of using commercial partners for the mission. The budget also allocates $150 million to planetary defense and explicitly funds the Double Asteroid Redirection Test DART mission. The administration's $1.78 billion request for Earth science is actually a smidge up from the $1.75 billion request in 2018, but the same missions proposed for cancellation in 2018, PACE, OCO3 and the Clario, are still on the chopping block. The Radiation Budget Instrument mission was quietly cancelled before this budget request, and once again, the administration is trying to kill Discover's Epic camera. They really don't like that camera. The Senate rejected last year's cut to Earth science through final congressional action has yet to occur, and these missions continue. For the overall proposed planetary defense program, the budget is $150 million for fiscal year 2019. $98 million of this is for the Double Asteroid Redirect Test. The entire program increases from about $60 million to $150 million. It allows us to embark on space capabilities and demonstrations of deflection techniques, and to start work on space-based detection and characterization capabilities. The second one is what we call a gravity tractor. The principle is that you station a spacecraft alongside an asteroid, and then the mutual gravity attraction between the spacecraft and the asteroid will slowly tug at the asteroid and bring it off impact trajectory. If it's a large asteroid, the relative mass of the asteroid to the spacecraft is an important factor here. If it is a very large, kilometer-sized asteroid, this is not going to have much effect. But the more frequent impactors are going to be those that are 100 meters or maybe less in size. So, now that the mass of the spacecraft becomes more of a factor and can have more effect on the gradually tugging on the asteroid and changing its velocity. Another idea that came along as we were looking at this was, well, what if you could increase the mass of the spacecraft after you got there? I.e., go down and pick up large, tens of tons of boulders off the surface of the asteroid and then put them on the arms of the spacecraft. It was going to be part of the asteroid redetect mission back in the last administration, but that program didn't make it through the transition. So, now we don't have that in our program yet. We are still interested in that technique, and perhaps a future demonstration for the planetary defense program could be demonstration of a gravity tractor. The third one, of course, is the one everyone likes to talk about, and that's the nuclear option. Not like in the movies Armageddon or Deep Impact. The most effective technique, we think, would be to have an explosion of a nuclear device several hundred meters from the surface of the asteroid. The nuclear radiation causes superheating from the asteroid's surface and imparts a force on the asteroid in the opposite direction. First of all, for those who haven't known, Hurricane Michael was a storm which was considered to be one of the strongest ones that threatened the Florida Panhandle by midweek. This storm was even stronger than Hurricane Florence that ravaged the Carolinas in September. One week after Hurricane Michael made landfall on the Florida Panhandles, more than 1,000 people remain missing, a rescue organization official said. People living in Florida were warned to prepare for Michael sweeping through. Up to now, a historic number of victims were recorded. Search and rescue teams looked for bodies through the ruined landscape of smashed homes and piles of sand on Friday, while more deaths were reported in Virginia, 600 miles away from where Hurricane Michael made landfall. Michael, so powerful that it remained a hurricane for 12 hours after making landfall in Mexico Beach, thrashed the Carolinas and Virginia, and was growing stronger again over the Atlantic, where the National Hurricane Center predicted it would eventually menace Britain with tropical storm force winds. Authorities reported 11 deaths as of Friday, with Virginia's state medical examiner ruled 4 drownings and the firefighters' death were storm-related. High winds, downed trees, streets inundated with rising waters, and multiple rescues of motorists from waterlogged cars played out in spots around Virginia and neighbouring North Carolina. Linda Marquardt and her husband somehow survived the very worst of it in Mexico Beach, where Hurricane Michael's eye passed directly over their home. Surging water filled their first floor, now muddied and ruined. They're surrounded now by devastation. Fishing boats and cars tossed like toys. Empty slabs where people hopefully escaped before their houses exploded in 155-mile-per-hour winds and were washed away by the storm's surge. Row after row of beachfront homes were obliterated by the epic Category 4 storm. The destruction along Florida's white sand northern Gulf Coast was catastrophic. Officials predicted rebuilding costs in the billions. In an interview with Reuters, Crowdsource Rescue co-founder Matt Marchetti said that at least 1,135 Floridians were still unaccounted for. However, many of these still listed as missing could be with friends or family elsewhere, or they might have fled the storm and didn't contact loved ones to inform them of their whereabouts, the report added. At least 34 deaths have been blamed on the powerful storm. 24 in Florida, 3 in North Carolina, 1 in Georgia, and 6 in Virginia. However, Hurricane Michael is a short-term concern for Florida. What is more serious are the bad effects, especially environmental concerns. Dead fish appeared everywhere. What is worse is a mega mosquito outbreak. They are galley nippers. Their presence has prompted the governor of North Carolina to appropriate millions of dollars to combat the invading swarms. Mosquitoes' size is very aggressive, quickly falling on their prey both in daylight and in the evening. The bite of this type of mosquito is really intense. This means that it will cause big trouble to the body of those who get bitten. The invasion of it is a serious concern for all the health of the victims in particular, and those residents in general. As climate change continues to worsen, the outbreak will become a huge concern across the globe. This leads to new epidemics. In brief, Hurricane Michael is a catastrophic event that alerts safety of the world. According to the National Weather Service office in Tallahassee, Florida, it could be the strongest hurricane ever to have made landfall along the stretch. It is important that from now on, people have to pay attention to the strange natural signs and be prepared for anything that could happen. Hello everyone, it's Ross from X Science. Today's topic will focus on U2 typhoon, a natural disaster that is threatening the safety of the whole world in the final week of October 2018. U2, the 18th typhoon to hit the Philippines this year, swept across the main island of Luzon on Tuesday, October 30th, with wind speeds of 140 kilometers per hour and gusts of up to 230 kilometers per hour, and was expected to exit in the afternoon. The typhoon, named Rosita by Philippine authorities, comes just 6 weeks after Super Typhoon Mangkhut dumped massive rains on Luzon, triggering landslides that killed more than 70 people. Thousands of people were preemptively evacuated on Monday. U2 is a catastrophic storm that was described as the most extreme typhoon of 2018, passed directly over Tinian and Saipan, which started in the northern Mariana Islands on October 25th with a speed of 180 miles per hour. Its eyes directly hit the islands. It is considered to be one of the strongest storms which had ever been recorded. Secondly, what you have to know is the effects and consequences. Many houses and roads were destroyed, the island's power grid severely damaged, and distribution systems completely destroyed on the island. People of Saipan and Tinian are in a state of shock. They claimed that they have never in their lives seen a storm of this strength. Windows were blown off, roofs were torn down, people have nowhere to live and are desperately looking for houses and emergency assistance. US Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico suffered calamitous strikes in 2017 hurricane season, and Guam was recently struck by Typhoon Mangkhut. Images of the storm's aftermath in the Marianas were horrific. In Saipan, roadways were littered with downed power poles, and trees, cars were smashed by debris. Some were overturned by the powerful winds. What used to be buildings were reduced to piles of tin and wood. The landscape being levelled by the devastation is so massive that the full extent of the destruction is not yet known. But here is another look at the destruction wrought by Super Typhoon U2. What the storm managed to accomplish was to quite make the remote island of Hawaii disappear from satellite imagery. This before and after image show the island as it appeared back in May 2018, and what it looks like after the storm had passed. All that is left of the island is tiny sketches of sand. The rest is hidden below the ocean. The final thing that we have to consider here is that how the storm affects residents' life. It is becoming a worrisome concern for our planet. Hurricanes Florence and Michael, which both brought unprecedented flooding to the Carolinas and catastrophic wind devastation to the northwest of Florida, have already exceeded the expectations of climate forecasters. At first, they predicted a below normal hurricane season for 2018, despite what was being told. Do you know what this means? This is an alarming sign of natural disaster. There is a record that since 1970, there has been on average 6 Atlantic hurricanes per year. There have been acid rains, storms, hurricanes, and global warming. Those effects are directly harming the world, making global residents face risks of losing their hometowns. A huge amount of money will have been put for charitable aid and so on. Our planet is under transformation. It is yet another sign of the many changes happening to our planet and the ways in which it affects the Earth's inhabitants. What we should do is to prepare the best before any natural disasters, especially during the time when there are numerous risks of such type of phenomena. And that's all for today's updates on Star Life. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to us for more information.